what shocked me more than anything is when I got to Fort Hood, when I PCS'd to Fort Hood, and I started seeing E8s, E9s, and 06s with no combat patch. And I'm like, where the hell have you, this was, I PCS'd in 2012. I'm like, you've had a decade, to just go over for a little, you didn't even take the mail over, what the hell?
Yeah.
And a lot of those people hit out, stayed under the radar, or maybe they went over and they did a little, they did a tour on the fob somewhere where, their biggest brush with death was when the ice cream machine broke down. Yeah. And now they're writing policy.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We've got a special guest today for the second time, Dr. Mike Simpson. How's it going?
Good, brother. Good to be here.
Wait, what was your last rank in the Army? Captain or major?
I retired as a major.
Yeah, because you went in with a
I
medical
deliberately
degree?
I sabotaged my records for the 05 board because as I like to tell people, one of two things was going to happen. Either I was going to make 05, which was pretty probable because they told me I was going to make it, and then I was going to have to decide if I wanted to stay.
Well, you were tabbed up, double tabbed, and you had a medical degree, so
I had 2 tabs, 5 combat tours. I had 2 BSMs, 1 with a V. I had an MSM. So yeah,
and no
DUIs.
No DUIs. That's the only thing that once you get to like E8 or 05, the only thing that can stop you if you got the creds is DUI. Right?
Sometimes
it's usually that.
Sometimes it's number of DUIs.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He had 2, you had 1, so you get promoted. Yeah. So I deliberately sabotaged my record, and I didn't. By deliberately sabotaging, I didn't. You know how you're supposed to go through.
You didn't fill everything out.
You're supposed to sign that yes, I reviewed my record. Yeah. They called me up and they're like, "Oh, Major Simpson, you haven't reviewed your record." And in looking through your record, you're pretty much a shoo-in to get promoted. You should. And I said, I want you to specifically write on there that you and I had this conversation, and I refused to come 3 miles to sign that form. I'm like, I want that on there because I don't, either, like I say, either I was going to get promoted and have to make the decision to stay to keep that rank at retirement, or I wasn't going to get it, and then I was going to be pissed off when I looked around and saw the people that did get it. So I did the George Costanza, I am breaking up with you.
Yeah, and then hide under your desk, obviously.
Yeah, basically.
To get some sleep. I don't remember what. God damn it! I saw it recently, but somebody's coming out with like a little action figure thing, and it's George sleeping under his desk. It's like awesome. A little tabletop thing. It's really funny.
That's fucking epic.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
That's an amazing episode.
So for those who don't know, you run us through your a brief history of Mike Simpson, pre-military, and then get into the military and run us through that.
Yeah. So pre-military, there's not much to talk about because I was 2 weeks out of high school in 1984, but way before many of your listeners are probably even born. I shipped off on an 11 X-ray, a Ranger contract, went through basic airborne school at Fort Benning. That was when all the individual Ranger battalions had their own RIP. That was before regimental RIP and before RASP and all this other stuff. So I went to 1st Battalion RIP at Hunter Army Airfield, was assigned to A Company 175. I was there for 4 years. I ETS'd and I did the SF Guard thing, which is what most people in the soft community were doing at that time. A lot of guys from Division 2 were jumping into these SF Guard units or the LRS units. So I was in 20th Group, got mobilized during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Mobilized but didn't deploy, but that was when I finally got to knock out SFAS. I finished the Q courses in 18 Charlie. I went to language school, decided I wanted to stay on active duty, turned in my gear, signed into 7th Group. I was in 18 Charlie and 7th Group until 95. I went to Fort Sam and knocked out the medic course, and then did the rest of my time as an 18 Delta. And I actually was in the medical school application and acceptance process when 9/11 happened. Had a crisis of consciousness, almost turned down medical school, had 2 different sergeant majors pull me aside, slap me around, tell me I was an idiot, I needed to go to med school and come back. They said, this war's not going anywhere. You need to come back as a physician who knows his ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
So went to medical school, did emergency medicine residency, went right back to the community, and was assigned to JSOC in a Tier 1 SMU at Bragg, and I did 6 years with them prior to retirement. And then ultimately I retired actually out of Fort Hood as the chief of emergency medicine in
what
year was it? 2016. Yeah.
What, I guess, you're a PA for a tier 1 unit or something, or what were you doing there?
So the way that it worked was there is a medical direct support unit that falls under the JSOC umbrella that provides far forward cutting edge medical support, and it's surgeons, emergency medicine physicians. The team leaders are PAs, usually PAs that have extensive senior medical experience as NCOs, either in Ranger Regiment or in SF. These are by far and away the best PAs that you're ever going to meet and ever going to work with. Just all outstanding individuals, all former SEALs, former Rangers, former 18 Deltas.
And what's the job there, I guess? Aside, like, compare it, obviously there's a similar billet in other places, but what makes it, I guess, what's other than being tabbed up? What makes you different enough to be in that specific spot? Because certainly the tempo is quite a bit higher.
Yeah,
right?
The selection process to get there, number one, the op tempo, and really the level of integration that we go through. So we're not like there's probably a half a dozen acronyms out there in various services for different medical units that claim the special operations moniker,
right?
And they're very much special operations adjacent. Okay, this is what I did was true integration of special operations medical personnel, right there to literally either be at the point of injury or get the handoff from the medic that stabilized that person at the point of injury. So, this is the level of integration not only while deployed but also in training, we spend a tremendous amount of our time going around and augmenting units, when training exercises are going on. So, for that reason, there's one of the things that since I've retired and I've become a SWAT physician, there's multiple papers that have been written on medical assets that do not regularly integrate with tactical units during training tend to be ignored during real world scenarios. The Las Vegas, Route 71 or whatever it was. That shooting was a prime example of that. Is the tactical medical units actually showed up. The scene commander had no idea who they were, said, okay, that's fine, go stand over there. When the area is secure, we'll come get you. Because they weren't integrating themselves regularly during training. And that's also true in the military is, as I mentioned, these kind of special operations adjacent units that go by various names. They don't integrate themselves during training. They're kind of, I think a lot of them have the kind of too cool to train type mentality. It's
it used to be a lot like that with Air Force special operators as well. And it wasn't the attitude problem. It was just being disjointed between the services. So
it was a communication breakdown.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So when I was when I was getting deployed to the surge, they changed it up. Instead of sending, what they used to do was, and I think they've gone back to it now. What they used to do is they would send X number of dudes into theater, like JTACs, TACPs, and shit like that. PJs obviously are doing they're working on their team, but and CCTs and JTACs, TACPs, they would just send however many the battle space needed, and then they would go to the units and help them out. But we got ours in advance. Like Jared Taylor was mine. That's how we fucking met, actually, in 2007 for the surge. So they sent him ahead of time, and we trained with him quite a bit, actually, before we ever saw theater, which is like invaluable.
It makes a massive difference.
Especially, I mean, walk me through the benefits of doing it in the medical field, because I think everybody can understand why it would be good to have the guy calling your airstrikes integrated into your team, but explain that part.
It's kind of on three different levels. So it's on the individual level, the unit level, and the capabilities level. So for lack of a better term. So they get to know me as an individual. So they know a little bit more about my background. Like
that you're not full of shit.
That I'm not full of shit.
So when Doc says XYZ, they just go do it.
Yeah, that right? I've actually seen shit before. I'm not some fucking Johnny come lately who doesn't know what he's talking about. The fact that I'll give you a great example. I briefly attached to one of the squadrons for a while, and when I first met up with one of their medics, Come to find out, he had gotten to 7th group about 2 months after I had left 7th group. He was like, hey, your name does kind of sound familiar. Oh, that's right, you were in Ranger Regiment. Oh, that's right, you went to USIS, and then you went to EM residency. So he knew that I wasn't full of shit. So I did know, if nothing else, I knew the business end of a gun from the non-business end of a gun. I knew if I hear clicky things, I need to get down and take cover somewhere. I know not to be flagging everybody with my laser or my weapon everywhere I go. So as a minimum, I'm not going to be a detriment to that operation on the ground. So that's what they learned about me as an individual. Then on the unit level, they learned, oh, this is exactly, this is what we come with. This is what we've seen in the past. This is how we've operated in the past. And then on the capabilities level, it's these are the things that we are comfortable taking care of, that we're 100% sure because it's been battle tested, we can do it. So we can provide stabilization to this type of casualty, to that type of casualty. These are the only things that we lack.
It's a new world now, man. I mean, I don't know what I've seen the numbers. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the percentages of survivability of traumatic wounds from, I don't think Revolutionary War they tracked, but from Civil War to World War I, World War II, and then to present, it's wildly different, right?
Massively
like one of the reasons we have numbers like, so for Iraq and Afghanistan, 4,000 deaths, but like 80,000 casualties, right? The reason it's not like 50,000 deaths and 30,000 additional casualties is because of this new medicine, basically, right? Like knowing to put your finger down into the leg hole, find the femoral artery, hold it, and then pack Curlex in there until you can't pack anymore is a relatively new invention, to be honest, right? Seems like something we should have figured out a long time ago.
Yeah, so the big thing, the three, if I had, and again, I've been out for 9 years now, so somebody might screed at this that there might be different data out there,
which is good, by the way.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons.
Thank God they're fucking improving.
So
on
until
stuff.
very recently, there were a couple of tactical exercises that I would I would participate in every year, and I let the guys that run it know. I go, hey, I said, hey man, I haven't deployed since 2014. I've been out since 2016. If you want me to come around and just sit in front of a room and give a talk and tell war stories, I'm happy to do that. But as far as sitting on a lane and pretending I know what the newest edition of the Ranger Medic Handbook has in it, I'm not your guy.
Field medicine changes pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't for a very long time, but when it changes, it's very rapid.
When it changes, it's rapid adoption. And the units that adopt more rapidly are more successful.
Of course. Yeah.
And the big three, in my opinion, that we saw in GWAT that made the biggest changes were hemorrhage control. So that was tourniquets and wound packing. That was one thing. Blood administration far forward, and surgical capabilities as far forward as possible. Those are the things that made the most massive difference. Because the quicker that you can get somebody, so if I can plug the hole, either put a tourniquet on or pack the wound, boom, stop the bleeding, replace the blood you've already lost, I'm already 98% of the way there. Yeah. The other 2% is having a surgeon on the other side of this wall that I can now hand that over to, that they can definitively take care of that patient.
Are we still pretending like 2 inches above the wound is where a tourniquet goes, or is the book actually say go all the way up to the joint or to the armpit or the fucking
so you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers, but I'm going to tell you. So
is there any utility to going lower than just all the way up in my armpit?
Yes. Okay. Yes, there is. Okay. Because there's less resistance, because diameter equals resistance.
Sure.
So if I only go 2 inches above the wound. So the reason high and tight is the hasty tourniquet, right?
Yep.
High and tight is it's dark. There's bullets flying. There's loud noises. I don't have time to look for where that hole is, so I'm going to go as high in the groin as possible, and I'm going to slap that tourniquet on, and I'm going to worry about where it is later. Then, ideally, once you're in a safe place, shooting's not occurring, maybe you can turn a blue light or a white light on. Now you can go, oh, hey, here's the wound. Now I can put a tourniquet 2 to 4 inches directly above that wound, because you need less pressure, right? Yeah. There's more wound. There is a little bit more salvageability to that limb if they are going to lose that limb, and that's not, we used to think that was 100%. Anytime you put a tourniquet on, you're going to lose it. But now we know that's not the case.
What is it, like 12 or 18 hours, depending on what it is now?
It's not quite that much. So the magic number, we know tourniquets are safe for 2, likely safe for 3. Somewhere between 3 and 6 is the line in the sand, and we don't know exactly where that is. And I guess it depends
on like oxygen levels and shit like that, probably, right?
It depends on a lot of factors. What vessel was injured? Yeah. What was your health prior to it? What was the mechanism of injury? How much of the surrounding structures are damaged? After about 6 hours, you can kind of figure that that's probably not going to be salvageable. It could be, but your likelihood rapidly drops off after that time. And that's why towards the end of the conflict, we started concentrating a lot more on tourniquet conversion, on medics being able to recognize, okay, I've got this guy, I'm either in an aircraft in an immature theater and I'm on a 4-hour flight, or the tactical situation doesn't permit extraction. Now I need to make the decision, can this tourniquet be converted to a wound packing and a pressure dressing?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And then of course that was another huge leap forward once we started pushing that down to the point of care level.
Yeah. I mean, every new I guess it comes in waves, because sometimes the new tech increases survivability and sometimes it increases like limb retention, right? Which is what we're seeing kind of now.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, you have morbidity and you have mortality.
Yeah.
So, two different things. Most you're ideally you're always looking to address both morbidity and mortality. Sometimes you have to make a choice, between morbidity and mortality.
Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. What, I guess, when you're operating in a unit like that, one of my buddies actually used to work at CALL, Center for Army Lessons Learned. I don't know if I don't hear anybody ever talk about it anymore. So
Nobody does.
I'm not sure it even exists. I'm sure it exists still, because it's an expenditure and the DoD is not giving up any money, right?
Yeah,
but
it might go under a different name. Somebody might have needed an OER block and changed it.
Yeah. And I wonder, it was big in the early 2000s, the train the trainer programs and stuff like that. They were big. Like, we would send dudes to SDM school or whatever, right? We would send dudes to like a mini fires school so they could learn more about call, because we would do it in EIB, and that's the only time we would ever really call for fire, even in our FTXs, because when we were on a field problem, we had our 13s running around and they were doing that shit, right? Like, we would be next to them and shit. But I kind of feel like cross training on that is important, because what if that dude gets clipped? And if our FSO is clipped and our 13 is clipped, then we're done, right?
Yeah, well, tactical combat casualty care is one of those things that every soldier needs to know.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. So what I wonder is, right now when we're in kind of a down period, and it seems like from the DoD's perspective, we're getting our ground troops ready for a near peer war in case something like that happens, which is the right move, because you can always train back to guerrilla. That part that's the easy part, in my opinion.
Sure.
But training for near peer, the big movements, the coordination and the logistics that are required to win those wars, is what we should be working on now. And what I haven't seen, I've seen a couple of things that are happening in the military right now that are really good. One, Robert Irvine, that chef with the big biceps, the British dude, and CZ, Ramon Colon Lopez, right? He and CZ are working to revamp the DoD's food program right now. Like, you walk into a DFAC and an Army, I don't know about the Air Force, is probably better, I guess, right? Navy might be a little better, but gay. If you walk into the Army's DFAC, it's fucking garbage. Yeah. There's like shit in plastic bag or plastic packaging. That should never be in a military DFAC. These are the most important professional athletes on earth, as far as we're concerned, right? Like, LeBron James goes 0 for 20 tonight. That doesn't really affect me. But if my guys can't fight, then we might not exist anymore. So that's happening. And Irvine and CZ have been working on it ever since CZ got out a couple years ago. What I don't see and what I haven't heard from my dudes is that stuff like call is being brought back, because I think it kind of got popular in the Vietnam era. So you would go on a deployment and you would come back, go on leave for 3 weeks, and then come back and you would go to basic training, not as a drill sergeant necessarily, but as an SME on the theater, and you would run training with the guys for a couple weeks or whatever that were in basic, because they were getting ready to deploy. I don't see any of that shit happening right now. I don't see call or somebody like that, or TRADOC or somebody like that, taking all this tier 1 information that we've collected for the last 25, tier 1 and 2 that we've collected for the last 25 years, and bringing it back down to the level of the bulk of the force, right? Because that's kind of what AWG did back in the day. But I just don't see that happening right now, and it seems like it's a good fucking idea.
Well, in my opinion, and I think the writing was on the wall for a while, but it's been true probably as long as there have been standing armies. And for lack of a better word, I call it the Hackworth effect, because he was the first person in modern parlance to bring it to everybody's attention that peacetime militaries are run by pokes. Our peacetime militaries are run because the people that understand that they have zero knowledge of war fighting, but they know what the regulations are. They know how to put in a funding request for X, Y, or Z. They know how to write an FM. They end up running everything, right? And we saw that during a lot of the Cold War, right? Now, the soft units were off on their own, kind of doing their own thing and staying above the fray on a lot of that. And then lo and behold, what happens in the first 2 years of GWAT? Hey, how come the Rangers are getting in more firefights but having fewer casualties, and then the casualties that they are having are surviving? What are they doing differently? Okay, maybe we should take a look at that instead of all of the douchebags who work in Building 2 that have been working in Building 2 since they were a junior E6, and now they're an E8, waiting to take a first sergeant billet somewhere else on Fort Benning. Why are we listening to these people instead of listening to the people that are at the tip of the spear?
Well, there was a lot of slick sleeves in the early part of the GWAT.
I'll tell you, what shocked me more than anything is when I got to Fort Hood, when I PCS'd to Fort Hood, and I started seeing E8s, E9s, and 06s with no combat patch. And I'm like, where the hell have you, this was, I PCS'd in 2012. I'm like, you've had a decade, to just go over for a little. I mean, you didn't even take the mail over. Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah.
And a lot of those people hit out, stayed under the radar, or maybe they went over and they did a little. They did a tour on the FOB somewhere where their biggest brush with death was when the ice cream machine broke down. Yeah. And now they're writing policy, a lot of them, because it's, a lot of the guys that were, the true war fighters, a lot of them stayed in past the period they would have normally got out during GWAT because there was still a war on. But as things started to wind down, it's like, well, the war's not on anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave. I'm going to take all my experience and I'm going to go take a civilian job somewhere, or I'm going to retire and go fly fishing.
I mean, I did
whatever.
That. It was I got out in October of 2010, and the war was winding down for the most part. Our next two rotations were listed as train ANA and then train IP. I'm like, no, dude, I'm infantry. I'm not doing that shit.
Yeah.
Which is a problem, right? I mean, I guess it's not that anybody fucked up. I don't think it's just kind of how it is, because when we entered the GWAT, we had a handful of generals, I guess, that had some combat experience in Gulf One and Panama, maybe Grenada if they were older guys, but they would have been really old at that point. But we didn't have any in-charge field grade officers, right? There were majors and colonels that were battalion commanders and brigade commanders and battalion and brigade S shop guys. They'd never been to war.
Right.
So we didn't have that until like 2005 probably, when those guys got promoted. Those lieutenants and captains got promoted. That was the first time we had actual, and I don't mean to I'm not saying there weren't war fighters, but they weren't experienced. That's just a fact, right? So it took a little bit of time to catch up to that shit. Yeah. To be honest, and that's just how it is. So we got to be better at planning for that, right? I mean, even if it's things like early so I don't give a fuck if you've been in 5 years, 2 years, 20 years. If you're capable of doing the job in that billet, you should get it, right? Whether it's a battlefield promotion for green to gold, or whether it's an officer battlefield promotion. Like, hey, Lieutenant, you've shown that you can handle this platoon really well. You got a company now. Good for you, right? I think there are men out there that are very capable of handling that. Yeah. And we need to identify and promote them as rapidly as possible. Otherwise, in a near peer war like that with an attrition rate, we're going to be fucked, right? Because the main thing is coordination. Competence and coordination of warfare is what wins. And if we're waiting for the pipeline to develop, and wars like it's going to be in 2025 forward, it's not World War I anymore. It doesn't take 3 months to move a mile. You know what I mean? Like, we've got to be rapid with this stuff. I really think that we need to start having some conversations about what the military is going to look like 10 years from now. Yeah. Or we're going to be in trouble.
And the problem, I mean, you've got somewhere, there's a room right now with a bunch of dudes in uniform whose job is to do that. But the question is, are they echo chambering themselves, right? Are they all just feeding in on the same misinformation, because in order to do that properly, you need to have 4 different rooms completely isolated from one another, where they're all coming up with their own vision. They're all coming up with their own training plans. They're all coming up with their own op plans. And those all go somewhere, so that regardless of which way we end up going, you've got a plan that reflects that.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't think they're doing that.
No, they're definitely not. I mean, some of it happens, but then, it leaks 20 years later, and people are like, oh, the government was planning to do this. And like, we have a contingency for everything, my friend. Like, if you see something that's a plan from like World War II era, and you think that they were planning on actually doing it, it's like, not necessarily, right? We have red cell teams whose jobs are, by the way, to make fucked up plans. That's their only job, is to make fucked up plans so that we learn how to combat them, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Anyways, so
no, and you bring up red cell teams, and that was I did a podcast on it. I wrote an article on it that was published in probably the only time I've been published in any type of medical journal, and it was specifically on, in the field of tactical medicine, the need to have somebody do what I call red hat stuff, or red cell stuff all the time, which is, no matter what you're planning for, there's somebody sitting in a chair on the other side of the room that says, this is going to be the OPT4 reaction to all of these actions. So this is what you need to plan for.
I watched Top Gun Maverick last night again, because it's awesome, by the way.
It is a good movie.
And when he comes in to start training the guys, he's holding the F-18 manual, and he goes, I bet you guys know every single word in this book, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, yep.
Yeah,
and
so are the bad guys.
He's like, hell yeah. He goes, yeah, so does your enemy.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So you have to, look, no matter what training we establish, the enemy's going to know to some degree about it, right? So the purpose must be to build resilience, one, and then ability to rapidly adapt. Those are the two. And look, that's what every fucking tier 1 and tier 2 selection is all about. Everybody there can physically handle it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been invited in the first place. It's whether or not you can adjust to the circumstances. And, a big part of it is start necessary movement. Sometimes you just got to get moving and figure that shit out. You know what I mean? Because there's no time to sit around.
A good plan now is better than a perfect plan 2 days from now.
Yeah. So it's like, is the way, this is the thing that worries me, because I keep hearing, my buddies down in 7th group, they went to JRTC, and it was like, it wasn't like a normal thing for us. They were just like, you guys are an infantry unit now, so behave that way. And they were like, all right, cool. And that's fine. The DoD's preparing for a near-peer war, and they want to fold that in, those operators into the bulk force. And I'm thinking, good, fuck yeah, dude, right? But my concern is that one of the things that has, so America changes its military style from time to time, but when we've been stagnant, it's not gone well. But when we've been intentionally asymmetric, we've dominated, right? So that is something that I'm very concerned about with this bulk force training for a near peer. It's like, we still got to be able to, we still need, I hate, this is a silly reference, but we still need Mel Gibson from The Patriot. We need lunatics out there. We need Shrek McPhee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lunatics. We need lunatics who are just going to be like, you know what? Fuck this, and just go do something that helps win the war.
Yeah.
And I am very concerned right now that that's not happening. But, our guys will figure it out. They typically do.
Yeah. It's, going all the way back to Task Force Smith, right? When the Army's got its head up its ass, sometimes it's going to find out in a very painful fashion, right? As they did with Task Force Smith, right? So, and then that became the motto for decades, right? No more Task Force Smiths, as they continue to do what got us into trouble with Task Force Smiths, right? So, what's the old saying? No plan survives first contact with the enemy. So if they become too rigid, if they become too dogmatic, if they try to conventionalize, if they try to make everything algorithmic, hey, that's going to work great in Garrison, that's going to work great in training, probably going to work great at JRTC, but once the enemy gets a vote, that's not going to work anymore. And then the cream's going to rise to the top. Now, the big downside to that is how much blood and treasure is going to be expelled in the realization of that, oh shit, we've been training wrong for 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is. That's the big concern. And it's not going to be you and me anymore. It's going to be, our sons, our nephews.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next generation.
But I don't want that. I don't want, this is, forget about what I want, but this is the desire of every man, I think. Certainly every leader or every father is to not have your kids have to go make your mistakes.
Yeah.
Like let's wipe those out. You can go make new mistakes and that's fine, but don't make the ones I made. That's fucking stupid. And if you do, it's my fault that you did it, probably, right?
Yeah. That's supposed to be the whole purpose of institutional knowledge, right? Is that we don't recreate those. We're going to make new mistakes. And like you say, I want my kids to make their own mistakes. Yeah. I don't want them to make my mistakes.
Well, we do that genetically. Like genetic memory is a real thing. There's a reason that a cat wakes up and as soon as its eyes open, it's ready to fight. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a very real thing. Anyways, this episode of Citizen is brought to you by our title sponsor, Omaha Steaks. Best steaks in the business, the oldest butcher in America, America's original butcher since 1917. A family-owned company with 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. And look, they've got everything, mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and even desserts. They got some sides on there too. You know how I feel about sides, but they have them. Grass-fed, grain-finished beef has more marbling for exceptional flavor and is the choice of steakhouses and professional chefs around the world. There's nothing quite like the unforgettable taste of a summer cookout. And as the summer heats up, the blazing hot sale is the perfect time to stock up and save on exceptional handcrafted flavor and convenience. Make your summer sizzle with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their blazing hot sale. And for an extra $45 off, use the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $45 off with the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. See site for details. And it's not just for you. It can be given as a gift as well. I've given a couple of gifts over the last couple of weeks of this. It's an easy stocking stuffer during the holidays, but even birthdays and all the things that come up during your life where you want to do something nice for somebody, for your dad, for the man in your life, or to make your wife's life easier by having a constant supply of meat coming to the house so she doesn't have to do all that grocery shopping, whatever. Doesn't matter what it is. Go to omahasteaks.com to get 50% off site-wide during their blazing hot sale. Use the promo code CITIZEN at checkout for an additional $45 off. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details. And a big thanks to our advertiser, Omaha Steaks. This episode is also brought to you by First Form, firstform.com/Drinking Bros, the best protein in the business. Protein is the building block of life, folks. I say it all the time. You replace every cell in your body over the course of 2 to 10 years, depending on how active you are, how much you eat, and how clean you eat. And if you're replacing it with garbage, you're going to be garbage. So make sure you're eating the best possible protein you can and supplementing with First Form. Don't forget about the micro factors. It's just a little simple pack. Open it up, dump it in your mouth hole, and feel better. You know, they've got the liver detox, which is a great thing for people that like to drink or people who, just want to be healthier. And then they have all these other supplements. They've got great pre-workouts. They've got great protein in all the flavors. And then, of course, for people on the go like us, they have exceptional meat sticks, protein sticks, and a variety of different flavors. And then the level 1 protein bars in a variety of flavors as well. That we talk about this stuff all the time. They're great. So go to firstform.com/Drinking Bros. It's the best company in the world. You've seen us with Andy. You've seen the company. We love these guys. It's a very American company. So go support them and support us. Firstform.com/Drinking Bros. That's 1stphorm.com/Drinking Bros. Now you do what you do, Dr. Mike, but you're also writing books. So we've had on Honed back in the day. Mm-hmm. Honed was finding your edge as a man over 40. It's talking about a lot of things you can do to I guess, feel younger. Right?
Yeah, it was a holistic, it was a science-based but holistic approach to fitness, and it was using all the knowledge that I garnered, 17 years as an operator, and then of course having to be, operator adjacent, even as a physician, and deploy, in my 40s, deploying, stacking up behind 19-year-old Rangers, and going through doors. I had to be in shape, on into my mid to late 40s. And I had to figure out ways to do that, because most of what you see in nutrition, in workout plans, it's being sold to you from somebody who is probably genetically gifted, and probably that's their only job.
Yeah.
So they have 12 hours a day that they only have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write a book for guys in middle age, working a full-time job, have to find the time to work out, have to find a way to make nutrition work, to make sleep work, to find the supplements that they need to stay healthy. And it spawned out of, I was getting emails and online questions all the time. Hey, what do you think about this? What about turmeric? Hey, what about magnesium? What about this? Hey, what about CrossFit versus this? Tabatas versus HIIT versus cycling versus other stuff. What should I be doing? And I experimented a lot on myself. I sought out a lot of people, guys like Drew Wingy, who knew more than me. And I ended up incorporating into that book, and it was massively successful. I've sold over 10,000 copies. I was on the Amazon bestseller list for I don't know how many weeks when it first came out. And the great thing is that book still sells copies today. So and I still get emails from people. Hey, I've lost 45 pounds, and and I just got my jiu-jitsu blue belt, and I'm doing this now. I'm doing that now. I never thought at 46 this was going to be possible.
Yeah, I get those too. Yeah. Like the weirdest ones are like when my lady will say, "Oh, this girlfriend of mine's husband saw this that you were talking about or doing, and now he's doing this."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, that's good for him." You know what I mean? Look, some of the stuff is, and why I think it's important for people to share their whole. Share your institutional knowledge and share your experiences, because a lot of people don't fucking know, and there's a lot of bullshit noise out there, like you said.
Yeah, there's tons of it.
Like this dude that's got traps up to his ears. He's on gear. One, which is do what you want, right? If there's a safe way to fucking supplement your body for sure. Like you shouldn't be on. You shouldn't be stacking Anavar for fucking 8 months at a time. That's stupid. You're going to kill yourself, but you're going to make your heart explode, actually. But there's ways to supplement your body. And to be honest, most men need it, because the average 21-year-old's testosterone today in America is the same as their grandfather in 2000. And there's a litany of reasons for it. Some of it, I think, is sociological with feminization and whatnot, but I think feminization is actually downstream. I think it's heavy metals, head injuries, plastics, all this hormones in food, all this bullshit. Right?
Sleep cycle, artificial lighting, screen time, all of these things.
Yeah, the blue
microplastics.
Blue light's really fucking this up.
They all play a role into it. A lot of it, processed food. We as a society, our diet absolutely sucks.
I'll tell you a quick story on that, on diet. So I got to the Army in late 2010, and it felt like shit for like 3 years, right? Felt like shit. And I ate like shit too, to be honest, just like we all did back then. And finally went to the VA and got my levels checked. My testosterone was 165, which is like 1,000. I mean, that's like a 90-year-old basically, right? And not every 90-year-old. Some of them would be in the 400s or 500s probably. Even with the Framingham data, they had some like, well, I guess they went up to 80, I think. So they had some 80-year-olds that were, higher up. Anyways, started taking testosterone in 2013, but it was the androgel stuff, and that stuff was the absorption rate like 20% maybe,
if that,
if you're lucky, right? So it's like it kind of got me up into the 4s, which they considered to be fine, and I didn't know any different. I'm like, fuck, I guess I'm just fucked now. I knew that my levels should be higher, and I knew I felt like shit still, but the VA was telling me they wouldn't give me anything to get it past where I was right then. So I just went to a buddy of mine who was a former athlete and started just dosing myself up with it. And I monitored. I got levels done all the time, so I wasn't like going up to 1,500 or any stupid shit like that. But kept it between like 750 and 850, maybe up to 900, depending on when I got tested. But at the time, I was taking a full cc a week, and now
that's a lot.
yeah. But that was what was getting me there, right?
Yeah.
And now through diet, exercise, and sleep, I take like 0.15 3 separate times a week.
Yeah.
Right? Stretched out.
And you can do it that way. I mean, different people do it different ways.
It's all about how you feel.
Yeah. It's, so
Because some people don't get the crash. I've talked to people who go IM into the leg or the shoulder or the butt, and they do it once a week. And I'm like, do you like feel?
Yeah, that's what I do, and I don't.
Yeah, I was like, do you feel the crash? And they're like, no, I never feel it.
I don't get a crash at all, and I've been on it since about the same amount of time that you have. I've been since 2012, 2013, because it was right after I PCS'd that I started feeling it, and I needed something, and I got on it. And originally I was on a twice a week injection. I'm on once a week now, and I was told do between 0.5 and 0.6, and I do 0.5, and that does just fine for me. But
that's total or once a week. You're doing
I do 0.5 once a week.
Yeah, so I guess I'm at 0.45 a week.
Yeah, so you're actually less than I am.
Yeah,
and what people don't understand. So
my test is still like 900 now.
Yeah,
right. Like I'm thriving at that level, but that's the difference. Like the sleep thing probably helped the most out of everything.
Different bodies are different about rate of absorption and how they metabolize it.
Yeah. How your body burns fat is a lot of it.
I briefly I had my own TRT practice for a while. I was doing it via telemedicine, and I had one patient in particular.
What was that, Graybeard?
Yeah.
Or was that,
the Graybeard Performance Academy. So I had a guy who came to me, and he was on like 0.75 a week, and he felt like absolute dog shit. And I did his labs, and his estradiol was fucking off the charts.
So he wasn't taking like an anastrozole or anything? See, that's the other problem.
Well, so that's a whole different rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The whole anastrozole thing is a whole different rabbit hole. So, but he was taking 0.75. His estradiol was off the charts.
Which is a pretty good bit.
Now, he didn't have gynecomastia, but he was having the somatic feelings, right?
Yeah.
He felt like crap. And I told him, I said, here's the problem. You're getting so much testosterone that your body can't utilize it fast enough. So it's converting it to estradiol.
Yep.
I said, you actually need to be on a lower dose. So I lowered him down to 0.6. He instantly felt better.
Yeah.
Instantly felt better. I checked his estradiol levels. They dropped. We did that for a couple of months. Then he was getting a crash. So I ended up splitting him 0.3, 0.3, doing it twice a week.
It's all bespoke, man.
Yeah, he's fine.
Like some people will develop thyroid issues over time as well, and you have to that's easy. It's armor or desiccated thyroid, one of the two. Whichever one works best for you, that'll do it. Anastrozole is meant to deal with the body producing more, not converting more, right? Which is a mistake that I think a lot of these TRT clinics make. They put you on a higher dose. But what, in my experience, and look, everybody's a little different, but in my experience, what worked for me was lowering the testosterone dose, having a commensurate level of HCG dose in there to make sure my body's producing naturally, and then a very small dose of anastrozole just to make sure that it doesn't go up, right?
Yeah, and so again, this is a whole rabbit hole we can go down, but the whole anastrozole thing is if they're not symptomatic, they don't need be very leery. What you don't want is you don't want to go to somebody who is treating you by algorithm.
Yeah, because that's the problem with testosterone in general is that Framingham data that treated 16 to 80 is the same.
Yes,
you're not the same as anybody else.
You don't want to go to anybody who's gonna. You should not be on anastrozole out of the gate.
Definitely not. No, you got to see how your body reacts first.
See how your body reacts. You need to know what your estradiol
that's 6 months.
And you need to know if you're symptomatic, because a big portion of whether or not you're going to be, your body's going to react to those elevated estradiol, or you're going to have estradiol elevation, and if you're going to react to it, is genetic.
Yep.
So anybody who says, okay, we're going to start you on this much testosterone and this much is anastrozole, they don't know what they're doing. They're treating by an algorithm. They've been given a laminated sheet, and that's what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, that's the problem.
The other side
These clinics are popping up all over the place, and some of them know what they're doing, and some of them don't.
And on the other side of that coin, you'll see the never. If you have a primary care physician, and you want your testosterone checked, and they're resistant to that, go somewhere else.
Yeah, because they don't know what they're doing.
Now, if you get it checked, and if this phrase comes out of their mouth, "You're normal for your age," fire them.
Yep.
They are no longer your doctor.
Because that's based on Framingham as well. By your age, they mean 16 to 80.
And it's a moving goalpost.
Yeah.
It's a goalpost that's been moved over time.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Average and normal are not the same things, right? The average BMI in the United States is basically obesity. That's not normal.
Yeah.
That's what's average.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the things you want to watch out for. Another thing you want to watch out for, and I've had multiple guys come to me with this. My doctor said he wants to put me on testosterone for 3 months, then take me off for 3 months and see how I do. We don't tell diabetics, I'm going to have you on insulin for 3 months, and then I'm going to take you off of insulin and see how you do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, that's retarded.
Yeah, we are addressing a hormonal deficiency. Okay? There's not only I'm going to tell you how you're going to feel that other 3 months. Worse than you fucking do now.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the downside of being on testosterone, and this is too, it is going to shut down your own production. Okay? But that's something that it's guess what? If you're not making enough, maybe that's just something at a certain age that you're just going to have to accept. You're just going to have to accept, I'm going to be supplement. Just like, I'm 59 years old. I'm on T. I take no blood pressure medications. I take no cholesterol medications. I take no thyroid medications.
I don't take any other medicines. I take the thyroid, Armor Thyroid.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
Yeah.
Other than the T and peptides, I don't take any other medication.
I take T.
Yeah.
I squat, I deadlift, I box jump, I do jujitsu, I do all those things. I'm not, compared to where I was physically a year ago, I'm in worse shape right now, largely to do with the schedule that I work now and some other things that have come into play. But, and I don't like to compare myself against other people. I'm still in the top 10% of 59-year-olds, So it is what it is. So, if somebody tells you, oh, we're gonna put you on for a little bit and then we're gonna take you off and see how you do.
That's a complete misunderstanding of how the medication works. You'd be shocked
to know how often that gets said.
Well, the FDA, with regard to the moving goalposts, they pull that shit all the time. They did a survey back in the day, I think it was like 2010 timeframe, where they were testing food for heavy metals and shit like that. Yeah. And everything was way over the limit. So what did they do?
They changed
They raised the goddamn limit.
They changed it,
The fuck, man? That's not how that's supposed to work. You decided what was healthy for human beings, and that's one of the primary reasons that we have so many heavy metals and everything now. And if you're out there and you haven't started this journey yet, or you're just in the beginning, it's going to take you about a year to figure it out, right? Because you need to test for 3 months at a minimum to see how your body reacts, and then you might have to dial in your estradiol, maybe. Not necessarily. Right?
Yeah. Depends on the person.
And then HCG, and then you got to take a look at IGF-1 too, your growth hormone, to see how that's being affected. Because if there's a couple of things you can tell. If your growth hormone is low, and if your free testosterone is low, even though your testosterone's increased, your thyroid is probably fucked up, right?
You probably need to do something.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most common one. There's other stuff that can cause it as well. So it's going to take you about a year of doing tests, taking the peptides and the drugs and stuff to really get it ironed out. But once you do, you're pretty much on cut. Like, I haven't had to change anything in a long time.
No, I haven't either.
You know what I mean? And I get my levels done every 3 months. I keep a really close eye on the somatic symptoms, like the physical symptoms and stuff like that, if I'm having any or not.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another red flag. Is I've had people come to me like, well, I've been on T for 8 months. When was your last lab? 8 months ago. No, wrong fucking answer.
It should be at least every 6 months.
Well, when you first start,
yeah, it's 3, yeah, for sure.
I do it every 3 to start.
For the first year, it should be every 3, in my opinion.
And then after that, you bump it up to 6. And the number of labs that I run for your first go around, your first set of labs and your second set of labs should both be a massive, massive, massive set of labs, because there's downstream effects from everything. So,
like B, you got to check the B. You got to check obviously the thyroid. You got to check.
Yeah.
You got to check the markers. I would recommend checking all the markers for your prostate health as well, because testosterone can affect that.
Yep.
Like, there's a whole panel, and anybody that knows what they're doing should, like.
Yeah. Well, and that's, you bring up a great point. Anybody that knows what they're doing. So you need to ask that person, what training did you receive and how to do this?
Well, what are some, I guess maybe you should publish this somewhere other than just this show, but there should be a list of like 5 or 10 questions that somebody could ask their healthcare provider that lets them know that person actually knows.
There are some, I do cover that. No, I'm pointing to the wrong book. in Honed, I did cover that, because I talked specifically about testosterone replacement and about how to kind of weed out whether or not your doctor's really qualified to be doing it or not.
Yeah.
But you need to flat out ask him, where did you get training in how to do this?
Because if it was in medical school 30 years ago, then I'm sorry, brother, that's not enough.
That's not it. You know, it's, you know, there are training modules that you can go to that are anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks. There are board, I'm using air quotes here, board certifications in it as well that are, you know,
I wouldn't trust that at all, to be honest.
It's I've
the reason is because they train back to the pharmacology. That's their job, is to get you back to pharmacology, in my opinion.
Not the ones that I'm talking about.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's better.
So they're a little bit better for that, but you need to know where they got the training, what makes them feel that they're qualified for this. Because a lot of people, you have two separate problems. You have the one problem of doctors that are just absolutely opposed to it and won't do it, and then you have doctors that want to do it but don't want to take the time to get any real training in it. So they go and they find an algorithm online somewhere, they print it out and they tape it to their desk, and that's how they're going to treat all of their patients.
No, man, it's
neither one of those is the right answer.
It's an active and ongoing triage.
Right, and
like,
they don't.
This little marker shows up. Oh, I know what that is.
And you don't want to be rigid in how you do it. You know, you need to be reacting to this in real time. You need to treat every patient as an individual. And you got to remember that you treat the patient like you were alluding to. You treat the patient, not the labs.
Right.
So, you know, it's, oh, your labs look great, but I feel like shit. Okay, then let's address why you feel like shit and figure out why that is, and we're going to address that.
Well, speaking of rigid and stupid, you've got a fiction book now, and you began the process of going through publishers to do stuff, which is good fucking luck these days, right? So tell me how that went.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. So, I mean, everybody already knows a little bit about me militarily, but I've always been a colossal science fiction and fantasy nerd, geek, whatever you want, loser, whatever you want to call us, right?
What's your favorite series?
So my favorite sci-fi book of all time is Starship Troopers.
Mine's Speaker for the Dead, the second book.
You like Speaker for the Dead better?
That's my favorite one, yeah.
So Ender's Game is high.
It's
Ender's
really good,
Game it's at times I would say Ender's Game ties Starship Troopers. I think Speaker for the Dead is good. I like Ender's Game as a standalone book. I like Speaker for the Dead. Don't get me wrong, I like Speaker for the Dead too.
Well, you know, we actually had him on the show a couple years ago. Orson Scott Card.
No shit.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Fucking
so
amazing. Yeah.
It was like the reason he wrote Ender's Game was so that he could write Speaker for the Dead, because the purpose was like, to me, it's kind of for you religious folks out there, it's kind of like I guess a deconstruction of the Good Samaritan parable, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah,
where like people think the Good Samaritan is about being a good neighbor or being kind to strangers, but Judea and Samaria were sworn enemies. It was like Israel and Palestine now, right? So this would be like a Palestinian finding an Israeli in a hole somewhere and fucking helping him out when all of his Israeli buddies wouldn't do it, right? So the point of Speaker for the Dead, I guess, is something like that, and then everybody being forced to recognize the truth can make a situation better, right? I think that's the underlying principle there. But yeah, I like Ender's Game was great. I mean, that was like I actually got obsessed with two of these books at the same time. That one and the Forever Wars was another great one.
I never read the Forever Wars.
You should read that. It's great.
I should, and you're not the first person to say that. But have you read the Hope Hubris series, Bio of a Space Tyrant?
No. Is that good?
That's a really good one. It's kind of unusual. It's a little bit. He's a little bit too obsessed with sex in it.
Look, sci-fi guys are perverts.
Yeah,
so that's nothing new.
And it kind of shows in this one, but it's good. The Seaford Saga is also really good.
Have you seen?
I was in Enoch when I read the Seaford Saga, and like half the guys in my Enoch class ended up reading it too, because I was talking about it all the time.
Did you ever read? You know Andy Weir, right? From The Martian. Did you read Project Hail Mary?
No.
That's a really good one too. They're actually, so they made The Martian into a movie, obviously with Matt Damon. I think Project Hail Mary got optioned as well, so they're going to make that into a movie sometime soon.
Very cool.
That's another one that I recommend. Not that we're talking about fantasy. Well, I guess we are actually talking about fantasy books.
And
so you're a nerd.
Fantasy wise, of course, you know, Tolkien, you know, the old G, you know, that's always going to be my favorite.
Tolkien,
Guy Gax's books, the Gord the Rogue series are really, really excellent. It's a
C.S.
shame
Lewis
that they're not
too, if you like those.
C.S. Lewis is amazing.
Kind of more geared towards kids, I guess, but
where
Tolkien was a little more graduated, probably.
Yeah, a little bit. There's a lot of really good ones out there. Anyway, so I was always, you know, a sci-fi nerd. I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons in high school, oddly enough, because the D&D kids wouldn't let me. It was like, it was kind of seat taken type thing. It was like, oh no, you play football. We don't want you hanging around with us. So I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons until I was in Ranger Battalion. But think about this. You're on a fucking you're exfilling from a live fire, and you're in the back of a Chinook, and all you're talking about is, hey, we got to go back and get cleaned up so we can play Dungeons and Dragons. This is what guys did. We
had LAN parties. So we were all playing like Rainbow Six parties. And shit like that.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of dickhole. So we would go out on patrol, get into gunfights, come back at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and immediately everybody set up their laptops and we start shooting each other in video games.
Dude, I was continually amazed that the Delta guys, all they ever wanted to do was play Call of Duty, and all they ever wanted to play it on was the Nuketown map. That was it. It was Nuketown map, Call of Duty, over and over and over and over again. They would do that every waking hour that they weren't out on target, and it always amazed me. And I was talking about this. There's another guy that you should have on your show sometime. His name's Randall Searles. He's a retired SF Sergeant Major. He and I were 18 Deltas together. He was one class behind me going through the course, and then we ended up being an ANOC together. He also jumped into Panama with Ranger Regiment. And he runs a company now called the Story Ninjas. Okay.
Wait, was he there with Troxel? He probably would have. I mean, Troxel was also there, but what unit was he in?
He was in 375.
Oh, okay. I think Troxel was in the 82nd back
I think
then.
so.
I think, yeah. Okay.
Randy runs this company now called the Story Ninjas, and basically he's worked with David Scott Mann. He's worked with a lot of people in editing and ghostwriting and helping them tell their story. And he worked with me a lot in the early days of the book, which I'll talk about and how that played into turning me away from traditional publishing. But Randy and I were talking about how there's so many guys in the special operations community that are also nerds, and we started calling them action nerds. These are guys that, like, when they're not reading sci-fi or playing, God of War on PlayStation, they're at the range, or they're doing a 3-gun match, or they're working to get their black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. These are guys who kind of live in two different worlds because the fantasy worlds reflect that type of lifestyle. I've never been one of these guys. Of course, you have the stereotypical, the couch potato with the thick glasses. Actually, that's the traditional nerd, and that's a subset of nerds, but that's not all the nerds. I know quite a bit of nerds. Ari Kanazian, who's really well known in the law enforcement and jiu-jitsu community, massive nerd, massive Dungeons and Dragons nerd, and I was always making up sci-fi stories, fantasy stories. I had a bunch of stories kicking around in my head for a long time, and I wanted to put them down on paper. Ultimately, what I ended up with is what you've got in front of you, The Last Dungeon Crawler. But my idea was, even though I had self-published Honed, my dream was I want to go traditional publishing. I want to be in airport bookstores. I want to go on Good Morning America and talk about my book. I want to see my book on flashing up on a sign in Times Square and be on the New York Times bestseller list. And right away I was told, no fucking way. That's absolutely just not going to happen. Traditional publishing is not for you. You as an author are not what they are looking for, and the story that you're telling is not what they're looking for, because it does not have a socio-political message in it that is a message of the times. That's the big thing that we see now. What do we hear all the time now? So we were talking about Starship Troopers now. Google Starship Troopers, and the first 3 things I guarantee that you will see why Starship Troopers is problematic in 2025, right? Why it embraces neo-fascism, shit like that. That's why you hear they take all these traditional stories and they want to put them into another form of media, whether that's TV or film, and they colossally fuck them up. And their excuse is, well, we're updating it for modern audiences.
No.
Yeah. There's no need to update classical stories.
You don't need to update principles.
No.
You know what I mean? Like the idea from you can call Starship Troopers neo-fascist all you want, but the idea of having to earn your citizenship through civic action, civic duty is not new. That's not a new thing.
Well, here's the irony. So when Verhoeven made the movie in the 90s, Verhoeven hated the book.
Yeah, that's what I've heard that.
And Verhoeven did think that it was neo-fascism. That's why Doogie is wearing what looks like a Nazi uniform, right? That's why it has that kind of look to it. But oddly enough, and even though he strayed wildly from the book, as a purist, there are a lot of things about that film that I absolutely hate. It stands on its own as an enjoyable movie because the basic concept, the basic premise of Rico's journey, of the hero's journey, that he's this rich, spoiled kid that didn't have to do anything, but he does it anyway. He learns to be a part of something bigger than himself. He learns the value of citizenship. He learns the value of being willing to lay down your life for the people to the left and right of you. That still is maintained in that story. And that's why it's still a good film, even though it's not as good as the book, and it's actually totally different from the book, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, there have been these problems for a long time with people who don't either fit the demographic or their content strays from the preferred narrative, kind of gets shut down. It happens a lot with nonfiction conservative. Well, it did. Now they're starting to catch back up a little bit. But for fiction books, good luck. Yeah. That's just not going to happen.
The irony is, and that's one of the best sci-fi series in my opinion. It's other than the new Trek, which I don't watch, but the original Star Trek, Next Generation, everything that spawned out of Next Generation. In my opinion, Deep Space Nine was one of the best because the storytelling was just absolutely amazing, and they told it in serial format. There's an episode of Deep Space Nine that deals specifically with racism and sexism in early 20th century America because they're writing for a science fiction magazine, but the female writers have to use their initials so nobody knows that they're a woman. And Avery Brooks is an African-American writer. Nobody knows that he's African-American. They think that he's a white guy, right? That was real in the early 20th century. Now the pendulum has swung the other direction. Right, when I'm pitching this book and I'm literally being told, if you adopted a female pen name, you might be able to sell this book to a publishing company.
Get the fuck out of here.
I was literally fucking told that.
I mean, what would be the point? Like the only reason to use a traditional publisher is because you qualify for the New York Times bestseller list. That's it. Because I guess there's some level of gravitas to say the Penguin published your book or something like that, but they don't do like what used to happen is they do the editing, which is very helpful, and then they do the marketing, which is very helpful. They don't do any of the marketing anymore. They still will edit, but they'll edit your story out.
They do, yeah. That's the thing is,
you know what I mean. They don't edit for
no.
They don't eded for
They do developmental editing, not line editing. You have to hire your own line editor. Because I know people that have published with the big publishing companies, and they're like, I had to get a line editor so that the person who finds if your commas are in the right place. Yeah. And if
but developmental editing
is misspelled a word,
hey, I think this might offend somebody. We're gonna change. Like no, the fuck you're not.
Well, that was the two things that I heard out of the gate because the protagonist of the book is male. All right, there is
that's racist right off the bat. So there you go.
So there is a strong female character in the book. I was told two things: make her the main protagonist, which absolutely and tell the whole story from her point of view, and write it under a female pen name, and you might have a deal. And I'm like, that's not the story that I set out to write. And I would rather fail on my own merits than succeed by lying to people.
Yeah, especially, I tell people this all the time. There are two groups of people that you cannot offend with inauthenticity. One is nerds that will fuck you up. If you get the science wrong or something like that, or if your continuity...
Or you get the science or the continuity in canon wrong.
Yeah, if your continuity is wrong, you're fucked, and then it's gun people.
Yeah.
You start saying clips or have a gun that shoots forever with no fucking reloads or anything like that, or just dumb military shit that doesn't make any sense, you'll lose that audience immediately.
So I'm gonna this might be a little bit more in depth than people even care to hear, but so Gene Roddenberry, one of his big things,
Star Trek,
that he always told, creator of Star Trek, World War II veteran. The big thing that he always told his writers, he said, if you say a thing can do X and cannot do Y, you cannot change your mind in 2 episodes for story convenience.
Yep.
Like once we if a dilithium crystal does this, That's what it does.
Yeah.
If the transporter can do this, that's what it does. You don't get to change that later. And that's where in the new Trek, when they did, again, this is, most people are going to roll their eyes because I'm getting way too nerdy. When Scotty said they could do transwarp beaming, that's when they threw Roddenberry completely, they threw the baby out with the fucking bathwater, and it's like, well, nothing means anything anymore.
Yeah.
Because now we were skirting, we were kind of writing our own adjuncts to the laws of physics before, but now we're just going to completely ignore them. So we might as well just, instead of Captain Kirk, we might as well call him Gandalf, right? Because it's just, it's going to do whatever it's going to do.
Yeah, that was one of the beauties of Battlestar Galactica. They just said FTL and never explained anything about it. Right.
Yeah, they never explained it. So it's, I loved the OG Battlestar Galactica.
They're both great.
As corny as it was great.
Yeah, it was really good.
The series was fucking amazing.
The series was really
You feel
good.
like you're on an actual naval ship. Everything from the speaker system that they talk into, the verbiage that they use.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, it was just really well.
And the story was written pretty fucking well.
The story was written great. That's
one of the best as far as sci-fi TV goes. For like, you can't really compare it to Star Trek because there's so many different iterations. I think Deep Space Nine is the best one. I agree with that.
Yeah,
and then
best character development.
Yeah, then Next Generation for me was second, but maybe because I grew up with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Battlestar Galactica is my favorite all-time sci-fi series.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, it really is.
So the book's out now. Give me the brief on what it is so people can read it.
So this is a story, as you can see from the cover, it takes place largely in New York City. So this is a story is a professor of history and archaeology at NYU. His name's Franklin Barbarossa. That's what everybody knows him as. His name at birth 6,000 years ago was Fulgrim Firebeard. He is the last of an ancient race of dwarves. And he survives today because he has been tasked, along with a few others, to basically protect the human race, protect the world from all this unbridled magic that is still out there. That, it's he makes the analogy in the book that, it's basically human beings are toddlers wandering around in a room of loaded guns and sharpened knives, and my job is to get them out of the way and destroy them so that they don't destroy themselves. Because there's magical items out there, there's scrolls, parchments, tomes out there that have spells that the human race could unknowingly plunge itself into thousands of years of darkness. So his job is to find these things and destroy them. And that's what he does. And there's a little bit of a backstory there about an ancient evil that they fought once. In this book, you meet him as a character, you meet some other characters, and they're a little bit worried that an ancient evil might be coming back again. So they're racing against the clock to put a team together. There's like any good book, there's a MacGuffin that they have to find that's going to be the key to basically saving the world. So they're racing against time to do that.
Yeah. Tasked by whom? I assume the book.
Yeah. So there was, for lack of a better word, currently I'm just calling them the Council.
Okay.
So 6,000 years ago there was the Council. And they asked for volunteers to be imbued with prolonged life and safeguard these objects. And he was the first to step forward. So
yeah, that sounds like something I'm going to read this weekend.
Yeah, it's a relatively short read. It's under 70,000 words. So I had a blast writing it, and so far I've gotten amazing feedback from the people that have read it. Both in my personal circle and on Amazon, where it's available.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I've got a bunch of friends in the fiction business. Greg Hurwitz is one of my best friends, actually. You know him from the Nowhere Man series, maybe. They just had, I don't remember what it's called, something con in New York.
Was it GalaxyCon, I think, is coming up. It was ThrillerCon.
ThrillerCon
just happened. Yeah.
So, I think I might go next year, actually. He said it was pretty dope.
Yeah, a friend of mine went to it. There's actually on the 19th of July, there's the Austin Comic-Con is actually going to be in Cedar Park.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to be there.
Wait, where in Cedar Park?
I think at the HEB Center.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
so I'll be there in the morning. In the afternoon of the same day, I'll be doing a book signing at a little local comic shop. So I'll be publishing that on my social media. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll have to check that out and see if I'm in town.
Another person that you need to have on your show is his name's John Delarose. So he is a science fiction writer. He runs a website. If you go to johndelarose.com, arose literally spelled just like the rice. If you go to his website, he blogs about it all the time. He talks about all the obstacles to getting published. He talks about the gatekeeping that's involved and how they're gatekeeping conventional publishing, but then at the same time they're saying, oh, if you self-publish, then you shouldn't even be qualified to win any of these awards.
Yeah.
It's a battle that he's been fighting for a while. He talks about it all the time. He's written some amazing books. He doesn't get the credit that he's due, largely because he rattles cages and pisses people off.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for swinging by and talking about all this today. I'm definitely looking forward. I need a new book, so I'm looking forward to. I usually simultaneously read a nonfiction and fiction book, depending on what mood I'm in, and I try to keep one each going. Mostly on Audible, but sometimes I like to break out the old. I've got a couple old school ones.
I haven't done Audible for this yet. I'm trying to. People are still asking me for an Audible version of Honed, and but I want to record it myself, which means there's a lot more time and money involved in doing that.
Yeah, you pretty much for 70,000 words, you got to set aside probably 5 days in the studio for
5
that.
solid days, and then I got to pay somebody to edit it. So
Well, maybe you can raise some money by selling this book first.
Everybody will go to Amazon right now and buy it, that'd be really helpful.
The Last Dungeon Crawler by Mike Simpson. Go check it out.
And if you're in the Austin area, I'll be at Adventures in Ink comic shop, which I believe the address is technically in Leander. I'll be there in the afternoon of Saturday, July 19th. I'll be doing a book signing there. So it's a brand new comic shop, privately owned. Guy's awesome. Eli's the owner. He's a great dude, and he agreed to let me do a book signing there. And that's another obstacle that I went around looking for places to do book signings. Comic shops are fairly receptive. Bookshops, not receptive at all.
Yeah, they're not great. Adventures in Ink.
Yeah.
It is 15201 Ronald Reagan Boulevard in Leander.
Yep.
And there's a coffee shop right next door, of course.
There is, yes.
So, go check that out, too. That'll be on, you said July 9th?
July 19th.
19th,
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What about Austin Comic-Con? You know when that is?
Austin Comic-Con, same day.
Same day,
So I'm going to go to the Comic-Con in the morning, mostly to hand out flyers and kind of check things out.
Okay, cool.
And then I'll be at the book signing in the afternoon.
I got to see if any of my buddies are coming into town for that. Any of the authors. All right, cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. And again, thanks for coming today. Always enjoy the chats.
Having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Everybody go buy the book. I know you guys are nerds and like to read books. That's why we do this. So thanks for coming, and thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.